Welcome to this, your daily 180 Bible study. This week we're talking about what does God say about marriage. When God speaks, it is authoritative and we need to listen. We're in Matthew chapter 19 and I want to look at two verses today, verse 4 and 5. You remember in verse number 3, the Pharisees came to Jesus and they asked the question, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for just any reason? In other words, she's not as pretty as she used to be, or I'm not really as excited about her as I am this other woman. I'm just not in love with her anymore. No, that's not a reason to get a divorce. That's not acceptable to God. Well, Jesus then begins to lay out the argument for the sanctity of marriage. Marriage is holy in the eyes of God. So here's what God says. You should not get a divorce for just any reason, because have you not read, verse 4, have you not read that he who made them at the beginning made them male and female? And we talked about this a little bit yesterday. God lays down the ideal for marriage. In the beginning, if you're Adam, you marry Eve. If you're Eve, you marry Adam. It's not Adam and Eve and Ethel and Mary, and it's not Adam and two other men or one other man, or Eve and another woman, one man and one woman. That's God's ideal. But furthermore, notice what he says in verse number 5 about the sanctity of marriage. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and shall be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. That word in the New King James, joined, in the King James is cleave. It carries with it the connotation of being glued together. I used to be in the lumber business. I used to sell engineered lumber products. And in many church buildings, you see glued laminated arches. And what they do is they take various pieces of wood and they lay them up just right and mill them, and then they glue them together. And engineers tell us that if it's done properly, the glue line is stronger than the wood itself. And if you try to bust that glue line apart, you won't bust the glue line, you'll actually break the wood. And imagine with me for a moment, this is kind of a crude illustration, but imagine for a moment, for some reason, I would paint my hands with super glue and put them together and say, now this is what happens in marriage. You are glued together. Not a good marriage, in a marriage that is in accordance with the will of God. And then I say, now let me pull my hands apart. And I'd have to get help, maybe get a couple of strong guys on each arm pulling apart. You wouldn't pull super glue from super glue. You would pull flesh from flesh. Malachi 2 refers to divorce as an act of violence. Not necessarily throwing blows, but it is, by its very nature, a harmful thing. Join us again tomorrow for your Daily 180.